Christmas Eve wrapped the small Montana town in a quiet white blanket. Snow drifted down slowly, softening the streets, rooftops, and flickering streetlights. Inside the grocery store on Main Street, holiday music played faintly, mixing with the sound of shopping carts and tired voices. Outside, the cold cut deep, biting at exposed skin. A lone biker pulled into the parking lot, his motorcycle rumbling briefly before going silent. His name was Jack. Jack removed his helmet, revealing a weathered face and tired eyes. His leather jacket was worn, stitched with patches that told stories most people never asked to hear. He had ridden all day, through frozen highways and empty stretches of road. Christmas Eve was never easy for him. He stepped inside the store to buy a few simple things: bread, candles, and flowers. Nothing more. When Jack came back outside, he sensed it immediately. The looks, the whispers. A few townspeople stood near the entrance, their expressions hard. Someone muttered, "Why's he here?" Another said, "This is a family town." Fear and misunderstanding hung in the air heavier than the snowfall. Jack paused, gripping the bag in his hand. He had been judged before, many times, but tonight felt different. Voices grew louder. A man stepped forward, pointing at Jack's bike, accusing him of causing trouble. Others gathered, some filming with their phones. Jack tried to explain that he was just passing through, but his words were drowned out by suspicion. His heart pounded. He didn't want conflict, especially not tonight. Across the parking lot, Emily Carter watched the scene unfold. She was a local schoolteacher, known for her kindness and calm nature. She had just finished buying gifts for her students whose families were struggling. When she saw the crowd forming around Jack, something inside her tightened. She noticed his hands shaking slightly, the way his eyes darted, searching for an escape that wouldn't escalate things. Emily hesitated for a brief moment. She was alone. The crowd was growing. But then she remembered the lesson she taught her students every December, that courage isn't loud, and kindness isn't convenient. Taking a deep breath, she walked toward the group. She placed herself directly between Jack and the angry voices. "Please stop," Emily said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "He hasn't done anything wrong." The crowd fell silent, surprised. Snow landed on Emily's coat as she continued. "It's Christmas Eve. This man is a human being, not a threat. We don't judge people by how they look." Jack stared at her, stunned. No one had ever done this for him, especially not a stranger. The tension slowly eased. Some people looked away, embarrassed. One by one, the crowd began to disperse. That night, none of them realized that this single moment, one woman standing between fear and compassion, was about to echo far beyond that snowy parking lot. The parking lot slowly returned to silence, broken only by the soft crunch of snow under retreating footsteps. The grocery store doors slid open and closed as people avoided eye contact, embarrassed by what had almost happened. Jack stood still for a moment, his breath visible in the cold air, trying to steady himself. Emily turned toward him, her heart still pounding. "Are you okay?" she asked gently. Jack nodded, though his hands were still trembling. "Yeah, I think so," he said quietly. His voice was rough, not from anger, but from holding too much inside for too long. "You didn't have to do that." Emily offered a small smile. "Yes, I did." They walked a few steps away from the entrance, toward the edge of the parking lot where Jack's motorcycle stood dusted with snow. For the first time, Jack felt safe enough to speak. He explained that he wasn't there to cause trouble. He told her he was on his way to a nearby military cemetery. His older brother, a former U.S. Marine, had been killed overseas years earlier. Every Christmas Eve, Jack rode out to leave flowers and light a candle. It was his way of honoring family when he had none left. Emily listened quietly, tears forming in her eyes. "My father served," she said softly. "People forget the sacrifices behind the uniforms, and the leather jackets." Jack gave a sad smile. "Most folks just see the bike." Before they could say more, the store manager stepped outside and apologized for the disturbance. The tension had fully faded now. Jack thanked him and turned back to Emily. He reached into his bag and pulled out one of the small bouquets. "For you," he said. "I was going to leave them all at the grave, but I think my brother would understand." Emily hesitated, then accepted the flowers. "Thank you," she whispered. Jack put his helmet back on, preparing to leave. Before starting the engine, he looked at her again. "I'll never forget what you did tonight," he said. "You stood up for me when no one else would." Emily waved as he rode off, the sound of his motorcycle fading into the snowy distance. She didn't notice the man across the street who had filmed the entire encounter. Later that night, sitting at home with a cup of tea, Emily's phone began to buzz. Then buzz again. And again. Messages from strangers. Missed calls. Notifications flooding her screen. A short video had been posted online titled, "Teacher Shields Biker on Christmas Eve." By midnight, it had thousands of views. By morning, it would reach millions. As Emily stared at her phone in disbelief, she had no idea that her quiet act of courage had just lit a spark across the country, one that would soon roar like thunder on American highways. By Christmas morning, Emily's small living room felt unusually loud. Her phone lay on the coffee table, vibrating non-stop, lighting up with notifications from apps she rarely used. Messages came from strangers across the country, some thanking her, others sharing the video with heart emojis and American flags. Emily watched the clip again, barely recognizing herself standing in that snowy parking lot. To her, it had been a simple moment. To the internet, it was a symbol. News pages picked up the story. Comments poured in, many from bikers. They spoke about being judged, followed, or avoided simply because of their appearance. The video gave them something rare, validation. Emily felt overwhelmed. She worried she hadn't handled everything perfectly, but the support was undeniable. Hundreds of miles away, Jack sat in a quiet roadside motel, staring at the same video. He had reached the cemetery just after midnight and placed the candles and flowers at his brother's grave. Watching Emily stand up for him brought a tightness to his chest he couldn't shake. He shared the video with his motorcycle club, adding a short message, "She stood up when no one else did." The response was immediate. Members of biker clubs across the United States began sharing the video in their private groups. Veterans, long-haul riders, charity riders, and weekend bikers all saw themselves in Jack. The comments weren't angry, they were grateful. One message stood out, "We should thank her the biker way." Plans formed quickly. Group leaders spoke across state lines. The idea was simple and respectful. Show appreciation, protect her from any backlash, and remind her town who bikers really are. No protests. No noise for attention. Just unity and gratitude. Back in Montana, Emily returned to school after the holidays uneasy. Parents stopped her in the hallway to say thank you. Some hugged her. Others apologized for what had happened. A few looked nervous, whispering rumors about bikers coming to town. Emily tried to calm everyone. "They're just people," she said. "Like us." Still, she felt a knot in her stomach. She had never sought attention. She had simply followed her conscience. Meanwhile, Jack rode home, but his thoughts stayed with Emily. He felt a responsibility, not just to her, but to the image of bikers everywhere. He agreed to help coordinate the visit. They chose a date just after Christmas, giving riders time to travel. Routes were mapped carefully to avoid disruption. Local authorities were informed in advance. On the chosen morning, engines began to start in different states: Texas, Ohio, California, Arizona. Riders packed flags, wreaths, and donation envelopes. They didn't know each other personally, but they shared one purpose. As Emily locked her classroom door that afternoon, she noticed an unfamiliar stillness in the air, as if the town itself was holding its breath, unaware that the distant sound of approaching engines was already on its way. The first sound was faint, like distant thunder rolling across the plains. Most people in town didn't notice it at first. It was early afternoon, and the streets were calm, dusted with leftover snow. Then the sound grew deeper, steadier. Windows began to vibrate. A few shop owners stepped outside, scanning the horizon. Motorcycles. Not one or two, but dozens. Then hundreds. The main road leading into town slowly filled with riders, their headlights glowing against the pale winter sky. They rode in organized lines, calm and controlled, American flags waving gently from the backs of their bikes. There was no chaos, no aggression, only a deep, respectful rumble that echoed through the streets. People gathered along sidewalks, unsure of what to expect. Some held their breath, others raised their phones. Children pointed in awe. Police officers, already informed, calmly guided traffic as the procession continued. At the front rode Jack. He parked near the school and removed his helmet, his expression serious. One by one, the riders followed, until the streets were filled with nearly 1,500 motorcycles. Engines were shut off almost in unison, and an unexpected silence fell over the town. Emily stepped outside the school building, confusion on her face. When she saw the bikes stretching down the road, her knees weakened. For a brief moment, fear flickered, but then she noticed something different. The riders removed their helmets. Many bowed their heads. Some held wreaths. Others clutched small flags. Jack walked forward slowly, carrying a Christmas wreath tied with a red ribbon. "This is for you," he said, his voice clear but emotional. "And for reminding us that we are seen as human." Emily struggled to speak. Her eyes filled with tears as she accepted the wreath. "I didn't do anything special," she whispered. Jack shook his head. "You did everything." One of the club leaders stepped forward and explained why they had come, not to intimidate, but to say thank you. He spoke about respect, service, and brotherhood. Another rider announced that donations had been collected for the local school and food bank, all in Emily's name. The crowd watching from a distance slowly moved closer. Fear gave way to understanding. Applause began, soft at first, then louder. Some townspeople wiped tears from their eyes. The riders stood together, not as outsiders, but as guests. For a few minutes, no one spoke. The silence said enough. That day, the town learned a powerful lesson: kindness travels farther than judgment. And sometimes, gratitude arrives on two wheels. The town did not return to normal after that day, it became better. As the riders remained for a while, something unexpected happened. Local diners opened their doors and offered hot coffee and meals. A bakery brought out boxes of fresh pastries. No one had planned it, yet kindness flowed naturally, as if the town itself wanted to make amends. Conversations began where fear once lived. Riders shared stories about long roads, lost friends, and why the bike mattered more than the jacket. Townspeople listened. Emily stood quietly near the school steps, still holding the wreath. She felt overwhelmed, not by attention, but by the weight of how one moment had changed so much. Parents approached her, some apologizing for staying silent at Christmas Eve. Emily answered gently. "We all learn," she said. "That's what matters." Jack spent time speaking with students who had gathered after hearing the noise. He told them about his brother, about service, and about respect, on the road and in life. The children listened with wide eyes, seeing a biker not as a stereotype, but as a man with love and loss just like anyone else. Before leaving, the riders formed a slow, respectful line through town. Engines started one by one, not roaring, but humming with control. Jack rode at the front again. He stopped beside Emily one last time. "You changed more than you know," he said. Emily shook her head. "You all did." As the motorcycles rolled away, the sound faded into the distance, leaving behind something quieter but stronger: understanding. In the days that followed, donations continued to arrive at the school and food bank. Letters came from across the country. The story was shared in classrooms, churches, and community meetings. Not as a viral moment, but as a reminder. Every Christmas Eve after that, the town held a small candlelight gathering near the school. No speeches, no cameras, just people standing together in the cold, remembering what happens when someone chooses courage over fear. Emily still taught her students the same lesson she always had, but now, she lived it. And whenever she heard a motorcycle pass through town, she smiled. Not because of the sound, but because of what it represented. Far down the highway, Jack rode on, carrying the memory with him. He knew the road would always be long and uncertain. But somewhere in Montana, on a snowy Christmas Eve, he had been reminded that kindness exists in unexpected places, and that sometimes, all it takes to change the world is one person willing to stand in front of another.